You're welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, we shall be talking about the sources of financing. Sources of financing, we have the short-term sources and the long-term sources of financing. And in this video, we shall start with the short-term sources of financing. Short-term sources of financing, we shall start with trade credit. Trade credit refers to the credit that is offered to customers at a point of sale by wholesalers, manufacturers, and retailers. That credit that is always given to you when you go to a shop to buy and they give you things on credit. When you go to a wholesaler and he or she gives you things on credit, that is what we call trade credit. It's a short-term source of financing to the business. Advantages of trade credit to the firms. It has no explicit costs, e.g. interest, so it's a free source of financing to the business. It's flexible in that it grows with the growth in the firm's sales. It has no complicated formalities in securing a trade credit. Then trade credit is relatively easy to obtain, especially to small firms. Then disadvantages of trade credit. Cash discounts are foregone. Most of the times when you buy on credit, you don't get discounts. Then firms buying on credit may be offered less favorable terms. Then stretching of the credit period by the buying firm may result into poor credit rating. Another short-term source of finance we have is accrued expenses. Accrued expenses refers to those expenses that are already incurred but not yet paid for. We have things like wages accrued, salaries accrued, taxes accrued, interest accrued, and inefficiencies in the billing by suppliers. So when you delay to pay your expenses, it's considered as a source of financing because you use that money that you would have used to clear the expenses for something else. So it's a short-term source of financing to the business. Advantages of accrued expenses as a short-term source of finance. It has no explicit costs like interest. It's easy to obtain and it involves no formalities. Then the disadvantage. The legal and practical aspects constrain the flexibility of a firm in lengthening the payment interval. The payment interval is usually 90 days, so you're not supposed to exceed 90 days without paying. Another short-term source of financing to the business is the overdraft facility. Overdraft is when a bank allows the customer to withdraw more than what they have on the account. And the advantage that we have is that it's flexible because it depends on the bank-client relationship, how you connect with a bank. Then there is no collateral security that is required, and it's available for longer periods than accrued expenses. Then it has disadvantages like it's an expensive source of financing in that the borrower must pay interest when they're returning the money. Then there is also payment of commitment fees. Before you getting an overdraft, you have to pay a commitment fee. Then we also have deferred income or unearned revenue. This refers to the income received but not yet earned, which is the same as income received in advance. It's also a short-term source of financing. Advantages: it's slightly cheap and flexible, e.g. rental income. It has no explicit costs like interest, and it involves no formalities. Another short-term source of financing to the business is retained earnings. Retained earnings refers to a portion of earnings left with the company after distribution of dividends to its shareholders. Advantages of retained earnings as a source of finance. First, it's a free source of financing to the business. It does not require any formalities. It avoids the possibility of dilution of control of the company. Instead of you issuing new stock to the public in order for you to get more capital, you can just turn retained earnings into capital. so it avoids the possibility of dilution of control. Then it helps with financial stability of the business, and it helps with stability of dividends. You can be able to pay dividends to the shareholders even in years when the company hasn't made any profits. Disadvantages of retained earnings as a short-term source of financing. First, improper utilization of funds. There will be careless spending in case there is a lot of retained earnings in the business. Then conservative dividends. In order for a business to have retained earnings, it must be conservative when giving out dividends to the shareholders. So it has to reduce on the dividends given to the shareholders in order for it to increase its retained earnings. Then another disadvantage is overcapitalization, since retained earnings can be converted into capital. When there is a lot of retained earnings, there will be overcapitalization of the business. And the last short-term source of financing to the business is factoring of debtors. A business can sell its account receivables or debtors to a factor company at a discount in order for it to get some money. So it's also a short-term source of finance to the business. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share with your friends, and watch my next video. We shall be talking about the long-term sources of financing to the business.